Well, I'd like to open up today's lesson with a question. Have you ever had something happen in your life that completely interrupted your plans? Nobody? Oh. And then much later you realize that life had something in store for you, something that you needed to learn. Well, maybe it was a difficult diagnosis, a job change, an unexpected visitor. Maybe it was ants. I'm serious, ants. But we'll talk about that a little later. So, Centers for Spiritual Living has a suggested title for this particular day in July, and it's a world that values all of who we are. And it's based on the book that we've introduced before for July, and it's by author Prentice Hemphill. And it's what it takes to heal and how transforming ourselves can change the world. So over this past month, we've had really an interesting and exciting journey with the talks that have been given, the lessons that have been given. We've gone anywhere from all of us being highly engaged in Visioning for America, that was facilitated by Reverend Kathy Fernandez and I, to Reverend Andy talking us and reminding us, actually, about our evolving consciousness. And that it doesn't just stay inside of us, that it becomes our relationships, our conversations, and our communities. And then last week, practitioner John Boyle, in his talk, Why Me?, actually took another look at how our consciousness may be connected with assumptions that bring about science of mind treatments, or another word for that are affirmations, that actually support our limiting beliefs. And so John suggested that we shift our thinking and rephrase our questions. And that way we already know that what we seek is already within us right here. So that brings us to today's lesson. So some weeks ago, my husband Alan and I spent a few days in Cambria. It's on the Central Coast with some really close friends. And the meditation that Johan did this morning brought me right back there with the ocean. It was just perfect. And one of our friends had been here for my installation ceremony in April. And when she got home, she told her husband about it. And then by then she had the recording and they watched it together. Both of them are Mormon. And they were so interested in my ministry and actually wanting to support it. They also wanted to learn more about Centers for Spiritual Living and the teachings of science of mind. So we had really a lovely conversation, and I noticed that none of us were seeking to prove anybody wrong or prove anybody right. We were more in a place of seeking to understand and celebrating when something was alike. It's like, okay. And then if there were differences, we respected those differences. So during the course of the conversation, the topic of free will and free agency came about. And the Mormons refer to free agency as that aspect of free will. So I have always been interested in interfaith and building interfaith communities. It's such a rejuvenating thing that this conversation that we had really spoke to that, and that there were people engaging that really were what some people would think totally opposite beliefs, but that is not the case. So when we came back home, shortly thereafter, Alan, my husband, answered a knock at the door. He opened up the door, and there were two women with bright smiles on their faces, and they were Mormons. And they were wanting to share the joy of their teachings. So we talked about respecting each other's religions and how the world would be a better place if people did that. And then the topic of free will and free agency came up. Go figure. So, I said to myself, there's something here I better be paying attention to. Is it possible that there's another root word in here that I need to think about? So I Googled free agency and free will, and here's the mini version of the definition. As agents unto themselves, individuals are responsible for the consequences of their choices. Being free does not mean being free from consequences. Rather, it means acting according to one's own will. So prior to these conversations, and this is why it piqued my interest, I was dealing with ants. And all of a sudden, I received a spirit download. I don't know if anyone, and that happens at times, and the words change agent came in. And I thought, I'd heard that word, those two words, many, many years ago where I used to live, but I dismissed it, didn't think much about it. So today's lesson is an invitation to become a change agent of love. And as such, we're going to explore the concepts a little deeper in 3 stories that are different stories that build on themselves. So what is a change agent? Well, a change agent is someone who helps life move from where it is, from where it's longing to be. And in the business world, a change agent is someone who helps an organization grow. In science of mind, we become change agents by allowing divine love to transform us so completely that our very presence makes a difference in changing the world. Our Centers for Spiritual Living has a mission statement, and in the mission statement it says, making a world that works for everyone, or creating a world that works for everyone. So raise your hand if you've ever thought of yourself as a change agent. Okay? Now keep your hands up if you always enjoy change. That's the key, right? Me too. So with this summer heat has come an invasion of ants in my home. So much so, my mouth is dry. I'm taking a medication, so bear with me if my lips and teeth stick to each other. And so how are ants change agents? Well, I wanted to choose an F word for my frustration with them. That was friend or foe. Were these friends or were these foes? Well, in the cleaning of our kitchen cupboards, Alan and I were just looking at getting rid of the ants. And we ended up instead relining all of our kitchen cabinets as we were getting rid of all those ants out there, or so we thought. It was a project that we had wanted to do for quite a few months. So the ants just encouraged us to make that change a little sooner. I'm happy about it. Although I was cursing under my breath, and I mean, really, I was. I asked myself, now, do I thank these agents for a tidy and clean kitchen? Or do I continue to have angst and, be upset with them because I have to coexist with them? Well, Alan had told me one time when I was complaining about them being on my body and crawling on me, he said, "You're just simply irresistible." And then he started to sing that little song, "Simply Irresistible." So, what could I do with that? I had to laugh. It lightened my serious mood. So I actually prayed about this. At my first prayer, it sounded like, "Spirit, please remove the ants." I thought if I did it nicely, it would happen. And then 5 minutes later, "Spirit, remove all the ants." 10 minutes later, "Spirit, why are you on their side?" Isn't that what we often do? We pray for transformation, but object to the form that it arrives in. So I've experienced that. And Prentice Hemphill, once again, as we heard in the healing meditation, said, "Through our bodies we experience, and in our bodies we heal." And I've experienced that in my nervous system. My consciousness takes a little while to catch up with that. So let's take a moment, everyone, and let's notice our own bodies. As you sit there, just notice your shoulders. Notice your jaws. And no judgment there. Our bodies tell the truth before our words ever do. So what did I learn throughout this whole thing with the ants? Well, I did my best to stop looking at them as my foe and decided to see and be open to what could I learn from them. But I sure wasn't ready to make them my friends. The real transformation wasn't really getting rid of the ants. It was how I allowed the experience to affect my nervous system. And what was my body experiencing through this time? And when I reflect on that, it's the tension and, all the blood flow, heart rate. So the transformation was watching myself move from irritation to more of a place of curiosity, some respect, and believe it or not, compassion. Compassion for the ants because the ants are doing what ants do. They look for what they need to sustain their lives and to sustain their communities, their colonies as their communities. Because they have to live amongst humans and other creatures. So they're doing their part as part of Mother Nature. And then compassion for myself because I really struggled with, I didn't want to kill them. I really wanted to coexist with these ants. I just didn't want to coexist in my house. So they ultimately became my unexpected teachers. So sometimes Spirit doesn't send us angels. Sometimes Spirit sends us ants. And not because life wants to punish us. It's because love refuses to let us stay asleep. So healing began the moment my body relaxed enough to see something different. And our Science of Mind founder, Dr. Reverend Ernest Holmes, said, "Science of Mind teaches that consciousness is creative. The world we experience is continually responding to the consciousness we embody. That means healing doesn't begin out there. Healing begins here, in our awareness, our heart-mind awareness, as we remain open to it." So in my first career, I've had more than one, I worked in the insurance industry, mostly group health, for about 20 years. And my favorite job was one where I was part of a 3-person team that helped to change the workflow environment and communication and just how things were done. And we had a visionary vice president who led this. It was great. We were called re-engineers. And so we were re-engineering these teams. And we had all kinds of charts. We had flip charts, we had flow charts, we had pie charts. And if in those days, because it was quite a while ago, if there were smartphones that existed, there probably was an app that had charts about charts. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this very much. It was my last 3 years, and so that was my hurrah for going out. Well, as such, this offered our employees a chance to not only learn how to manage their teams themselves instead of being top-down, they were more sideways, and that was really a good thing. But what was more satisfying was witnessing the changes that came about in each individual, because I often observed that there was at least one person in a team who did not believe in themselves. And the more that they practiced, the more that they had a sense of safety, of acceptance, and of belonging, then they started believing in themselves because they were all in it together. It was such a wonderful thing to, just to see that blossoming. And what happened was the teacher becomes the student, right? I had to learn those things before I helped them learn it. And then I was learning right along. Lots of fear that I overcame. This was the first time I ever even did anything like that. Never even knew what to do on a flip chart, and they don't even use those anymore. But it really made a big difference in my life and I could see in the people's lives there. So have any of you here ever had someone believe in you before you believed in yourself? Yes. That's what change agents do. It's beautiful. So these employees discovered inner courage, and they found their voices, and they all learned collaboration. It was so gratifying to watch them, and I realized that we thought we were, redesigning workflows. What we really were redesigning was consciousness. Classic science of mind, way back then. I was talking with Dr. Reverend Carolyn the other day, and she brought up being consciously conscious. And that stuck with me. I see now that this was what was taking place in my workplace, and also what was taking place within myself. Holmes stated that love rules through law, and love is the divine givingness, and law is the way. So in the month of June, I had a wonderful opportunity to go on a vacation, and I called it the girls' vacation. It's one that I had wanted to do for a long time and was going to do right before COVID came. And then, of course, COVID came, and there you have the interruptions. And after that, there were quite a few life events that happened. So finally, this took place, and I was able to attend a ministerial installation. Actually, not an installation. She actually was, yes, it was her installation. Got a chance to see that, her graduation, actually. And in Washington, and at the same time, we had a long-time friends that I'd known for 20 or 30 years prior. It had been that long, actually, since we'd seen each other, that had all moved up to Washington in British Columbia, and we had a reunion. And then I saw my cousin, and she had been there for many years, my favorite cousin, so I used her home as a home base. Well, during all of this time, what took place was far beyond what I ever even had imagined. As we got together, we listened to each other, we laughed, we cried, we shared things about our lives with each other that no one even knew had happened. And then the times that we were laughing so hard, we had tears streaming down our faces. Well, sitting on my cousin's deck, and both of us enjoyed our morning cup of tea, we enjoyed the splendor of the state of Washington. I don't know whoever has been in Washington this time of year. It's gorgeous. Everything was green. There were spring flowers everywhere, and the dogwood trees were in complete bloom. Just breathtaking. No fences, so all of the houses felt connected, interconnected, their own community. So, so open that as we sat there, we enjoyed a meandering deer every now and then that would go through, and just nibble on the roses that you painstakingly try to take care of. So amidst this nature's beauty, we were able to also enjoy hiking. And my cousin has a forest right behind her. And when we did that, we'd have some moments of silence as we looked out from a hill that the whole hill was white wild daisies, and in the distance was the majestic snow-covered Mount Rainier. Imagine that. Feeling like you're in heaven. So they had benches periodically placed where you could actually sit. So we would do that. We'd sit in our silence. And with our friends that gathered up in the northern part of the state, we got to enjoy not only the forest that surrounded us there, but also the lavender fields. And we visited a lavender farm that were in complete bloom. It was so beautiful. So during this time, we witnessed each other. We listened and we comforted each other. And we saw that as how we approached the hills and valleys of our lives. And that we accepted the fact that we just did our best. And I realized during this time that none of us tried to fix each other. So I thought, this this is what love feels like. Healing is simply being fully present. So none of us left those conversations as the same women who came together the week before. And not because we, didn't solve anybody else's life, but because we offered one another the greatest gift, to be completely seen. So Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. So isn't that exactly what change agents do? The ants became the agents. My cousin and my longtime friends became the agents of change. My workplace became agents of change, and I became agents of change. So maybe being a change agent isn't something we do. Maybe being a change agent is something we become, someone we become. So I'd like to invite everyone to go within for a few moments. Feel free to close your eyes if you'd like. Think of one person, and don't say their name. Just picture them. Someone who needs your patience. Someone who needs your courage. Someone who simply needs your presence. What if this week your only assignment was to become love for that one person? So in conclusion, when tomorrow morning arrives, life will ask each of us the same question, not through words, perhaps through circumstances, or through interruptions, or through strangers, through our family, or through opportunities that we did not expect. Not someday, here. In this conversation, here in this inconvenience, here in this disagreement, and here in this moment. Because every act of patience, every act of courage, every act of compassion quietly changes our fields of consciousness. Ernest Holmes reminded us that love rules through law. Love's not merely something we feel. Love is something we become. And every time we choose love over fear, curiosity over judgment, compassion over certainty, we become change agents. Not because we fix the world, but because we allowed the presence of Spirit, the presence of God, to become visible through us. So perhaps that is how the world we've envisioned all month is born. Not all at once, but one awakened heart, one courageous conversation, one sacred choice, and one beautiful act of love at a time. We don't become change agents by changing other people. We become change agents by allowing love to change each of us first. And so it is. So we invite Alice back up, and I think is, okay, very good.